Sound check test. Sound check test 1 2 1 2. Good here. Sound check test 1 2 1 2. Good here. One two 1 2. Make sure our LinkedIn is in. Waiting for the stream to populate. Not yet. On here. Are we on here? Yes. Make sure this is public. Yes, it is now. Get that on. Good morning, everybody. On the other applications, getting everything set as it needs to be on our other platforms. Make sure this is out the way it's supposed to be. Let's see. Oops, it's supposed to be public. Oh, so YouTube, they had me as a private stream. So now let's just make sure that we are public when it's supposed to be on YouTube so they can actually see. Is this public? Yeah, it looks like it's public. It should be public. Let me see. Is this public? Yeah, it looks like it's public. It should be public. Let me see. Is this public? All right. I'm watching myself on YouTube. All right. So are we live here? Let me just make sure this is a public stream. Sometimes this happens on YouTube. They put me on it goes in as a private stream when it should be a public stream. All right, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. All right, here we are. I hope everybody's having a great morning, great start to your day, week, etc. Let's get into the topic here today. I'll see what the topic is. We're going to talk about the wherever we want to talk about this happening, but the mass shootings or mass violence that has been happening. We'll keep it centered on the United States of America because I'm going to talk about the United States in some specific ways, but you can apply this to other areas of the world that you wish. Let me get my book up here so y'all can see that. All right, that's better. All right, other areas of the world that you wish. We're going to talk about these mass issues that have been happening. I'm going to give you my points, and I'll take questions and comments as usual. If y'all ready to get into this, y'all already know what this is about. Y'all have seen this if you watch the news. All of you are using the internet, so you're familiar with the subject. You've heard about it. You hear people talk about it. Maybe you have a lot of opinions on it. Maybe you just heard about it and didn't really pay much attention. Maybe it hasn't hit very close to home for you. Personally, for me, it's not like I know anybody who's been a victim of any of these things or anybody who's been a perpetrator or anything like that. But I do see it on the internet, and being that this is a current event, and I'm talking about current events here, that's the reason why I'm talking about it. Just maybe 2 or 3 days ago, there was a mass shooting that happened, or what people are calling mass. When they say mass, what they mean is just more than one person. That's what it means. So just so y'all know the definition, mass does not mean it has to be 300 people. Mass just means more than one person. So it was a mass shooting that happened in, I believe it was, I don't know what town it was, but it was in Wisconsin a couple of days ago. And it was in a school, and there was a student in the school who did it. And I think 2 people got shot, and then the shooter, killed themselves. And this was a female who did it. And some people were trying to say this person was of a changing gender, but the person actually was not, just a girl. And this just flared up this whole conversation about violence and guns and shooting, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to help set all of you straight on this subject here today. So for those of you who don't know me, and those of you who do, let me reintroduce myself. My name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre All Day. I'm a former 9-year professional athlete. I'm the author of 35 books. I've done 4 TEDx talks. I own this company and this brand that is called Work on Your Game. You can find out more about that at workonyourgameuniversity.com. What we do is we work with entrepreneurs, business professionals, sales teams, and businesses in general to help you take your game from where it is to where it needs to go. And we work with people who want to be in the top 2% of what they do. And what we do is we have a system that basically pulls all the tools to help athletes get to the top of the sports game, and we translate those tools over to the business game. So that's what Work on Your Game is all about, and that's why it's called what it's called. Let's get into this topic. So the first point on this whole concept of mass shootings and things that most people, not most people, let me back up. Many people who are on one side of this conversation, whenever there is some type of mass violence that goes on, usually involving a firearm, one of the first things you hear people say is, well, we need stricter laws when it comes to firearms, when it comes to guns, and somehow, some way, we got to restrict the type of guns that people have, or the amount of guns that people have, or people's access to guns, et cetera, et cetera. My response to that is no, N-O, that is not happening. We are not taking the guns away, not here in the United States of America. One of the reasons why the United States is the United States is because we have citizens are allowed to have firearms. As a generally speaking, citizens can have firearms. Yes, we know there are rules and laws around it, but generally a citizen can get as many firearms as they want if they're following the basic laws and rules that are in place, and you don't have any red flags on your profile, et cetera, et cetera. And to restrict people's access to those, no. I'm a defender and fan of the Second Amendment of our founding documents, and the Second Amendment must be protected and defended at all costs. One of the reasons why we have citizens allowed to have firearms here is back when the founding fathers put this country together, they understood that one of the biggest problems that we had with the crown of the country that used to run America before we had the revolution was that when the people in charge start to overreach their power and they do not believe there's anything that the citizens can do about it, then they become more corrupt. So as the saying goes, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the reason why citizens should be allowed to have firearms, again, this is just a general idea around how the country was formulated, was that if the citizens have firearms and the government starts to get out of hand, then the citizens can do something about it, because they can do more than just talk. They can do more than just complain about the situation. They can actually do something and get the attention of whoever's in charge, being the government, the king or the queen, whoever it happens to be. And that's one of the reasons why we have firearms. One of the things that some of you may know or may not know is that when they had the virus a few years ago and they had all the lockdowns, the first places that started to lift the lockdowns and started to lift all the restrictions around the virus a few years ago were places where people had more firearms, usually red areas, as we said, more conservative leaning, conservative voting, red areas. Those are the first places where the restrictions got lifted. Why? Because the citizens were not going to stand for it anymore. Because citizens were not going to allow themselves to be locked down and restricted anymore. And the governments in those areas said, okay, well, I think we might as well listen, because there's a lot of people around here with firearms, and there may be an uprising of pushback if we don't allow these people to live how they want to live. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, Dre, what are you saying? Are you saying that a bunch of citizens, if they really, really got upset or disappointed, or let's just say upset or disappointed, for lack of a better term, about the lockdowns, or if citizens get upset about anything that's happening with the government, are you really proposing here, Dre, that people would just go and get their firearms and they would come up against the government and do something to them because they don't like the situation? My answer to that question is yes. That's my answer to the question. Now, many of you may look at this in civilized society and say, well, that sounds crazy. It sounds something like January 6th or something like that. Here's what you all need to understand, that at the base, at the foundation of every interaction happening between humans is the possibility of violence. Why? Because violence is the end game of communication. The people cannot agree on things and get along in any other way. If you and I are having a conversation and there's only so far we can go in speaking, we can make the decision to just part ways. I'll go that way, you go that way. We can make the decision to agree somehow, some way. one of us can convince the other person, or we can just decide to take it to the most base level of human interaction, which is violence, which is how this is how many countries have come to be formed. This is how many people get into power in the world. Again, in civilized society, and those of you who don't understand this stuff, you may think that everything just happens through a civil voting process and a democratic process, and people want what they want. And okay, you don't like me, then I'll just calmly walk away and walk off softly into the sunset. That's not how it's happened historically. Historically, when countries or people cannot get along and they can't come to a conclusion and can't come to the same, can't come to one accord, then violence is the bottom line. That's what happens next, is violence. And this is why countries have conflict between each other. This is why countries go to war. This is why we have militaries, and the strongest militaries end up dominating. The United States has the strongest military. That's why we dominate the world, at least for now. And there are other countries with strong militaries trying to build up so that they're in a position to battle against us if they so choose. Violence is the bottom line. And the reason why the Second Amendment matters so much is because the Second Amendment allows the citizens to be able to use violence against the government if necessary. If it is deemed necessary, they have the ability to do that. And that's why the Second Amendment matters, which is why I always think it's crazy that when there's any type of mass shooting, and I'll get around to what we can do about that in a second. This is the first point. When there's any type of mass shooting, you hear a lot of people, citizens, and of course you get the politicians, and we're going to get to them also. They come around and they start talking about, well, we need stricter laws around firearms, right? We need stricter laws around guns. We shouldn't allow people to have guns. Or if you're a parent and you have guns in the house and your kid somehow gets access to the gun, that means you're wrong, et cetera, et cetera. You hear people saying things like this. And it's an emotional argument, all based in the bottom line. The end game of this argument is we want to restrict people's access to firearms. And they're saying they want, and sometimes it's just everyday citizens saying this, and sometimes it's a politician saying it. But there are many everyday citizens, which is crazy to me, and some of you are listening to me right now, who believe that restricting the access for you and me to firearms is actually a solution to this issue. It is not a solution. And I'll just explain to you why it's not a solution, because if the government comes to understand that everyday citizens like you and I don't have access to firearms through which we can enforce our will upon the government, because remember, the government is supposed to be by us and for us. We don't work for the government. They work for us. If the government comes to understand that we don't have the power to fight against anything that they're doing, such as, excuse me, any form of corruption that the government is enacting, if they come to understand that we don't have the power to do anything about it because we don't have firearms, well, guess what? They're going to just do whatever they want to do. They're just going to run roughshod over the citizens. And if you remember the virus from a few years ago, the rules that got put in place that many of you probably didn't agree with, but some of you were forced to follow. One of the reasons why those rules got put in place, because I believe, and many people talk about this, that it was just a test run. Just a test run. How far can we push these people? How many rules can we put on them before they start pushing back and saying, no, we're not going for this? And that's exactly why the firearms matter, because a firearm, doesn't matter how big or strong you are, a firearm can stop anybody. And that's the reason why, even though it may be a bad thing that there was a school shooting, it may be a bad thing that somebody went into the mall and 10 people lost their lives. Yes, those are bad things. And we're going to talk about what we can do about it in a moment. But one thing that we're not going to do is restrict citizens' access to firearms as a solution, because, again, that puts us citizens in a position where the government can just take complete control over us, because they know that we have no weapons with which to fight back against them. That can't happen. Everybody understand what I'm saying here? So just because someone has used a thing the wrong way or has abused it in a way that hurt other people unlawfully or illegally does not mean that we're going to ban the thing. It's just like if somebody gets in a car and they drive drunk and then they cause an accident and somebody loses their life, that doesn't mean we're going to ban automobiles, or we're not going to ban alcohol just because someone misused it. People misuse things all the time. That doesn't mean we're going to ban the whole thing from actually being possible. Again, that doesn't make any sense. If someone misuses a knife, we're not going to ban knives. Someone misuses name anything else that people can misuse. Someone misuses a baseball bat. Instead of playing baseball with it, they go beat somebody to death with the bat. It doesn't mean we're going to ban baseball bats. So we can't go banning things just because somebody misused it. Okay. And yes, we can do things such as, let's say, when it comes to schools, Can you put police inside of a school? Sure, you can put police inside of a school. Some people don't like that concept. They're like, well, we shouldn't have to put police inside of a school because the kids should just be there to learn. They shouldn't have to worry about somebody coming in doing X, Y, Z. Well, I'm going to get to that in my second point. But it's a different thing if you have police inside the school to protect the children from some outsider coming in with a firearm and doing something crazy. But what do you do when the shooter is actually the student? Because this is what's happened in many places. You remember Columbine from back in the day. This situation just happened this week. The shooters were students. All right, they went to the school. So it's not like the cops are stopping them from walking in. Now, if you walk in with the firearm brandished, that's a different thing. But the student, if you're already inside the facility because you're a student, then the police can't really stop you once you decide to do what you want to do. Especially if you're sitting in the middle of the classroom, you just pull something out. So the cops can only block outsiders generally. The whole point here is we're not going to blanket solve, quote unquote, this problem by saying, let's just take away the guns so that nobody has a chance to do anything negative with a gun. All right, that's not what we're going to do. Now let's move on to point number 2, because some of you may be wondering, or some of you may even be commenting, well, Dre, what are we going to do? If somebody is misusing a gun, what can we do about the situation? Well, that's a good question. I have an answer for you. So there's an author by the name of Thomas Sowell. Some of you are familiar with him. If you're not familiar with him, you should look him up. His last name is Sowell. He's an older guy. He's still alive, but he's in his 90s. But he's written several books. And one of the things that Thomas Sowell talks about, and you can find his videos probably on whatever app you're watching me on. You probably see people post them. YouTube has a lot. Maybe some you'll see on TikTok. I'm not sure. He talks about the constrained vision versus the unconstrained vision. So, and actually, let me back up. What does the constrained and unconstrained vision mean? So the unconstrained vision is basically, and I'm paraphrasing how he describes it. He describes it more eloquently. But the unconstrained vision is kind of like the utopian society. So the unconstrained vision is a person who says something like, hey, there was a school shooting yesterday, so here's what we should do. We should take away all the guns that everybody has so that there'll never be a school shooting again. Sounds good, but that's a utopian society. Doesn't really make sense. Again, it'd be like if somebody misused a kitchen knife, that doesn't mean we're going to take away all the silverware. Or if somebody misuses an automobile and hits somebody on purpose, doesn't mean we're going to take away cars. If somebody misuses alcohol, we're not going to take away alcohol. Y'all get the point. The unconstrained vision is this concept that if we create enough rules and laws through the government, which is expanding the reach of the government, which I'm not for, if we create enough rules and laws through giving the government more power over us, then somehow, some way, they'll eventually create this society where nothing bad can happen. Nobody can do anything wrong. Nobody can ever get hurt. And there will never be any calamities that befall any human being on the planet or any civilian of our country. This sounds great on TV. It looks good on paper. But as they say, real life tends to differ from the lab test. That doesn't work. This unconstrained idea that everything is just going to be perfect if we just make more rules, more laws, etc., is a bad idea. This is why anytime there's some type of tragedy or bad thing that happens in the world, and the first thing you hear people saying is, oh, well, all we got to do is make a new rule or a new law or some new policy that would essentially, according to the way people theorize it, it will block people from ever doing that bad thing ever again. This does not work. All right, it sounds good, but it doesn't work. Sounds good on paper. It looks good on books. It sounds good when you're some consultant going and teaching this to people. Sounds great when you give a TED talk on it, but it doesn't actually work. All right, it's been tried. It's been tried for years. Human beings have been around for longer than all of us have been around. People have pitched these ideas and tried them for years, and it does not work. You cannot create enough rules, laws, and policies to make it impossible for anything bad to happen to anybody. All right, this is impossible. Why? Because we got human beings running things, and I'll get there. I'll get to that in a second. Now, the other side of it, because I told you there was the unconstrained vision. That's the vision that we can just set it up and everybody's going to do everything perfect if we just put enough rules in place. The other vision is the constrained vision. And the constrained vision, is what the founding fathers had in mind when they created the founding documents of the United States of America. They understood that human beings are mere mortals. They understood that we are imperfect. They understood that we will make mistakes. They understood that sometimes humans are going to do bad things. They understood all of this. Therefore, because of this understanding, they designed the framing of the United States with processes in place that basically considered the fact that human beings are not perfect. Therefore, we can't design this country as if everybody's going to be perfect because everybody ain't perfect. That's why we have a system in America called the system of checks and balances. That's the reason why we have 3 branches of government. Because if we only had one branch, like the crown of the country that was running America before the revolution, if we only had one branch, they have absolute power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So yes, we have the executive branch with the president, but we also got to create another branch, the legislature, and then we got to create the judicial branch, and they each check each other. So none of them has unchecked power, because that way none of them can become too corrupt or corrupt at all, hopefully, because they're all checking each other. So the president doing something crazy, then the legislature will check them, and the judicial system can check the legislature, and the president can check the judicial system, and they all can check each other. So no sector has complete power over everybody, because human beings are not perfect, and you don't want to give anybody absolute power. Anyone with absolute power is eventually going to become corrupt. This is just our understanding of human beings and human nature. So since human beings are flawed, since human beings make mistakes, we all need to be checked in some way, shape, or form. This is the reason why the highest levels of performance in life, in any aspect, sports, business, whatever, we all have people around us who can check us. High-level business people have people around you who can check you and say, wait, we can't do it that way. Sports athletes have coaches and trainers around us and teammates who can check us, even executives. So Donald Trump just won the presidency. What's one of the first things the president starts announcing? Who's going to be in their cabinet? What is a cabinet? Cabinet is basically a bunch of trusted advisors who can basically check the president and say, hey, Mr. President, you probably shouldn't do that. How about we do it this way? Have you taken a look at this? Have you considered this? So the president is not just sitting there making all decisions on their own with all this power that nobody's checking. That's the constrained vision. The constrained vision factors in that mere mortals, imperfect beings, are the ones who will be executing our process. Therefore, it is impossible to have a perfect outcome. You cannot get a perfect outcome from imperfect inputs. Did everybody hear that? You cannot create a perfect outcome from imperfect inputs. So what does this mean? Every time someone misuses a firearm and there's a mass shooting, let's say, for example, because that's the topic here today, there is no set of laws or rules or policies that can be put in place that will prevent that from ever happening again. It is impossible. Only way that would be possible is if you took away every single firearm that everyone has and nobody had any. The problem with that is, first of all, you have no way of gathering all the firearms that are already out there. Secondly, you couldn't stop someone from getting one illegally if they wanted to. Third, as I already explained, if the government understands that no one has a firearm with which to fight the government, then the government will become corrupt in its own sense, simply because they know they can get away with anything that they want to do. So this is the reason why you can't create this perfect outcome of let's create a system to where there could be no possible mass shootings. This is impossible. You can't do it. There are no perfect outcomes, ladies and gentlemen. There are only trade-offs. We must accept the trade-off of people having firearms is that some people will misuse them, period. That's the way it works. The trade-off of people having firearms is that they will be misused. And even though it's unfortunate, and I'm not hoping that it happens, there will be another one of these. This will happen again. There will be somebody else driving outside under the influence of some controlled substance like alcohol, and they're going to be driving and they're going to crash into someone who's not doing anything wrong. And that person who got crashed into might lose their life or get severely injured because of that person who misused alcohol. Is that going to happen? Yes, it is. Is there anything you can do to prevent this from ever happening ever again? No, there is not. This is called the trade-off. Everything in life has a trade-off. Everything in life has a trade-off. And if you are not familiar, if you don't know what the trade-off is of anything that you're doing in life, it's not because there is not a trade-off, just that you don't know what it is. Doesn't mean that there isn't one. Everything has a trade-off. All right, so any situation in life that you think is just perfect and there are no downsides, that's not true. There are downsides. You just don't know what the downsides are. You are just unaware of the downsides, not that they don't exist. They absolutely do exist. There's a trade-off of everything. Every negative thing, there's something positive in it. Every positive thing, there's something negative in it. And anything that you are dealing with or living in, you just haven't looked at the flip side of it because there is a flip side. Everything has a flip side. Again, no matter how you are feeling about it, there's another side to it that would maybe you would feel differently if you looked at that other side. So we have to accept the trade-offs of humanity because human beings are imperfect. Everything has a trade-off. That's the thing. See, if we were all just robots and no AI generated, then maybe we could create a perfect society. The problem is you and I would no longer be needed and we would be eliminated for us to have a perfect society. Because you can't have a perfect society with imperfect human beings. Human beings are not perfect. There are no perfect humans. Therefore, we can't create a perfect society with human beings around because we ain't perfect. So it's impossible. Everybody understand? You can't create a perfect outcome with imperfect inputs. It's not possible. Again, it's like you can't expect your vehicle to run on all cylinders perfectly if you got a Ferrari or some super sport car and you're putting 87 unleaded gas into the tank. You can't do that. You got to put 93 octane. If you want it to run at its highest possible level, you got to put the highest level inputs in it. So if we want our country to run like some super sports car, we can't put 87 unleaded fuel into the gas tank. And we are the fuel. We're 87 unleaded, meaning we're the base level, not perfect inputs. You can't get perfect from us. Impossible. Everybody got it. Point number 3. We are talking here today about mass shootings and what could possibly be done about it. Laws and rules, because some people might like this concept. Let's just make more laws. Let's just make more laws that make it harder for people to get access to a firearm. Let's just have more, what do they call it? More sensible gun laws or something like that you hear. Kamala talked about it. Joe Biden talked about it. Barack Obama talks about it. Usually people on the Democratic side talk about this. Let's just make more sensible gun laws and more sensible rules when it comes to getting access to firearms. And you hear politicians say this, and everyday people say it as well. Here's the problem with laws and rules that are designed to stop negative things or crime from happening is that they only apply to people who follow laws and rules. You see, if I decide that I'm going to be a criminal, if I make the decision sitting right here that I'm going to commit some crime, then I've already considered that there are laws that say don't do it. But I understand that, and I'm going to do it anyway. See, criminals don't care about the law. Only people who care about the new laws and new rules for what you can do and what you can't do are people who follow laws and rules. But if I decide I'm not going to follow the law, I have made a conscious decision to break the law, then I don't care what the law is. Therefore, if I want to go obtain a firearm illegally, one that I'm not supposed to have, and I decide I'm going to use it illegally against someone else, then I don't care what the law is. I've already made the conscious decision that I ain't following it. So this whole concept of we're going to create some rule that's going to stop things is that it only applies to people who are already following the law. Right? So people like you and I who follow the law consistently, making new laws and rules for firearms doesn't really affect us that much because we already follow the law. We ain't going to do nothing wrong. It's the criminals that we got to worry about, and they don't care. So one of the biggest problems with politicians politicizing crime and any type of negative social outcomes is that criminals don't care about these things. That's the reason that they're criminals. That's literally what makes them criminals, that they don't follow or care about the law, at least not in a moment in which they're committing the crime. And in that moment, they've made a conscious choice that they're not going to follow it. So taking guns away, as people like to say, or the concept, and even people on the Democratic side try to say that they're not going to do this. Kamala Harris even said this during her campaign. She said, we're not going to take people's guns away. She claimed that she was a gun owner. I don't know, how many of you think Kamala actually owns a gun? Put yes if you think Kamala actually owned a gun. Put no if you think that she does not. I personally was skeptical when she said it because she said she owned a gun. And then in a later interview, she was asked, you said you own a gun. What kind of gun you have? You ever shot it? I was skeptical. Kamala said that she owned a gun. I'm not sure. And she said her vice president candidate, Mr. Walz, Governor Walz, she said he owned one too. But then y'all saw the video of him trying to use a gun that he was allegedly using on the shooting range or out hunting, and he didn't quite actually know how to use it. Doesn't mean he doesn't own a gun, but I was kind of skeptical of those things they're saying. So this whole concept of taking the guns away doesn't matter to a person who decides that they ain't following the rules. Nor will it protect people who want to be protected by firearms, especially the way that we have. Here's the other side of this is people who want to be protected from someone using a firearm in the wrong way. So you want to be protected by somebody else who has one, such as a police officer. One of the problems that compounds this whole issue, especially in the United States, is the way that we've demonized the police. I mean, let's go back to 2020. Go back to the Mr. Floyd situation. Go back to many situations that haven't become bigger news of a police officer trying to do their job, and they end up in a physical engagement with a suspect. Something goes wrong with that suspect, especially if that suspect happens to be black. And now people are politicizing that and making it into a big story. Oh, well, the police are always doing negative things to these type of people. The problem with it, whether you believe it's correct or not, the problem is it demonizes the job of being a police officer. So that means either A, fewer people want to be police officers. This is exactly what happened in Minneapolis. They had a shortage of actual officers because nobody wanted to do the job of being a cop because of the way that the job was being portrayed. Or B, people are still being cops, but they can't be cops the way that they're supposed to. They hesitate to do their jobs because they don't want to get a court case against them, or they don't want to get fired from their jobs, or they don't want to be going viral on social media for the wrong reasons because they were dealing with the suspect in the way that they were trained to. But now, if you deal with that suspect and something happens to them, the suspect gets injured, the suspect unfortunately passes away, something like that, now you look bad and you might end up getting incarcerated like Officer Chauvin in Minneapolis. So who wants to deal with that? Who wants to be the person who has to deal with that because you're doing your job of being a police officer? So we run into all of these problems. No matter which way you turn, you run into a different problem. So let's take the guns away. No, we're not going to do that. Okay, let's have the police protect us. Well, the police have been demonized for doing their jobs. And it's kind of calming down now after the defund the police thing clearly did work. That it's kind of calming down, but we still have the same problem. All right, the flaw in this whole argument is that there is no perfect outcome, as I've already explained. This is why you should never cheer for politicians who are saying, or just co-sign any civilian who is talking about, well, we should make more laws and more rules. All that does is give more power to the government. And I already told you, absolute power corrupts absolutely. You don't want to be in a position where the government has absolute power to do whatever they want to do, because eventually, even though it may have ostensibly started as a way of helping and protecting you, it always starts that way. Till eventually they decide to turn around and use it on you. See, it started as I'm helping you, then eventually they're using it against you, and you don't even realize that it happened. And you can't be mad because you're the one who co-signed it. You're the one who signed up for it. You're the one who voted for it. This is one of the biggest challenges I had with the past election, 2024, that of the things that each candidate was proposing, Kamala Harris was strongly proposing that the government have more power, more overreach, and more control, which I'm generally not a fan of, regardless of what they were going to have power, overreach, and control over. I'm just generally not a fan of giving the government more power and more authority over citizens. Why? Because the government, again, is supposed to be by us and for us. That's not what the government looks like these days. I'd rather the government be as limited and as small as possible, have as little overreach as possible, which is why some of you watch these and you may say, well, is this guy conservative? Is he MAGA? Is he Trump supporter? Is he liberal? Is he Democrat? Is he a Harris supporter? I have friends down here in Miami who say, Dre, listen to the things you say. You're actually much more libertarian, because I hear libertarians are all about limited government and as small government as possible. So I actually probably have some beliefs that are touch on all three: libertarian, Democrat, and Republican, or conservative, liberal, and libertarian. So we don't want to give the government more overreach, because the government is wildly inefficient with damn near everything that they have control over. I can't. What is one thing the government has complete control over that they are effective and efficient at? They're both effective, meaning they do the things that you want them to do, and they're efficient. They do it without waste. Can you name anything? I think the only one that anyone's ever mentioned I can give credit is the military. And I don't even know the details of what they do, but most of the money goes to the military, and we have a pretty strong one that deters opponents. So I'll give you the military. But other than that, is there anything else? I can't think of anything. So anyway, moving on. Point number 4. We're talking here today about the mass shootings and what could possibly be done about it. Number 4, politicians. Someone said the USPS. No, because the USPS is a monopoly, so we can't really say they're effective or efficient because they have no comparison. We can't really say that what do they compare to? If you were to privatize that and open competition, I think UPS, FedEx, DHL, et cetera, would kick the USPS's ass in terms of effectiveness and efficiency. But because they have a monopoly, you can't really compare. So anyway, politicians on both sides. Point number 4. They use dead bodies to promote their causes. They all do this. Now, some do it more than others, but they all do this. Now, they, politicians, whether they're using the dead body to promote that they're anti-gun, or they want to restrict the Second Amendment, or they want to talk about the background of the person who did it. So this is a white person did it, or a MAGA supporter did it, or a person who changed their gender, they did it. Whatever it is they want to say. or the ideology of the person. Oh, the person who did the shooting was a Trump supporter, or they were a registered conservative, or whatever it is. And what happens is everyday citizens pick up on this rhetoric and they do the same thing. They say, oh, well, nowadays we all know what happens. As soon as we hear there's a mass shooting, the first thing we want to find out, who's the shooter, what race are they, and who was their family, who they vote for, what side were they on, and then we basically politicize the whole conversation based on that information, completely ignoring the people who've lost their lives, completely ignoring the people whose family members are now passed away. We ignore all that and we just immediately politicize the conversation. So, and everybody does it. They do it on all sides, just depending on who the person is that can be blamed. So whether you're bashing a white supremacist, people who have allegedly, again, changed their gender, people who voted for a certain politician, people of a certain color or racial background, all of it becomes theater. None of it is actually useful. None of this is actually about solving the problem, because I don't think many people are that interested in solving the problem. Many people are just interested in how can I politicize this and make it something that I can draw attention to myself or draw attention to whatever idea you already believed in. So, for example, if you hate Donald Trump and you hate MAGA and you hate the conservative side of the United States, and you find out that some mass shooter was a white person who was somehow connected to Trump and voted for votes Republican or as a registered Republican, you're going to take that information and you're going to use it to draw more attention to whatever points you've already been making. Like, see, this is the reason why you can't support Trump, because look, we got this mass shooter who did something, while completely ignoring any of the people who did the same thing on your side of the aisle. And this is the problem. And this is one of the things that social media has allowed. Social media is not to blame for this, because social media is just us. It's just me and you getting on the internet and saying what we want to say. So social media, all it did was provide a platform for humans to be human. So you can't blame social media for anything, because all social media is people like me and you getting on our phones and devices and saying what we want to say. Social media didn't make us say it. We decided to say it. All they did was give us an opportunity to say it. So and next time you find yourself blaming social media, quote unquote, whatever you mean by that, social media for something, what you're actually talking about is people, because that's all social media is user generated content, and the users are me and you. So anyway, last point, number 5, is there a fix for this? That's the key question. Is there a way to fix this whole issue of mass shootings, if you believe this is even a problem? I generally don't even think it's that big of a problem. My answer, though, is no, not really. No. Is there a fix? And let me finish blowing my nose before I keep talking. Is there a fix for mass shootings? Is there a way to solve this problem such that it doesn't happen anymore? The answer is no. There is no solution to this. There isn't a solution. It's accepting that human beings are humans. One of the trade-offs is that human beings sometimes do crazy stuff and do bad things. Sometimes people commit crime. This is a trade-off of humanity. Now, if you would like to eliminate that trade-off of humanity, fine. Here's the trade-off of the trade-off, is that we have to eliminate humans. Only way we can eliminate humans being human is that if there are no humans. So any of you on board with that, put the word eliminate in the comments. If you believe that you would like to eliminate any human mistake, because humans doing things that are unlawful or immoral, however you want to judge that, or doing something crazy, only way we can eliminate that possibly happening is that there had to be no human beings at all. So I don't like this concept of people talking as if there's some type of blanket solution, such as, well, we need more social programs, more mental health programs. Let's take away firearms. Let's demonize a particular group, whether that be of the shooter or a group that's okay with guns like the NRA or anything like that. All of that is complete nonsense. All right. There is no program or idea or social initiative you can create that's going to stop people from doing stuff that is crazy if they want to do something that's crazy. You can't do it. It doesn't work. And again, any idea you have, it's been tried. I'm not saying the idea can't be improved on. I'm not saying you can't keep trying if you want to fight the good fight, but there is no way you can eliminate all human error. Let's just call it human error. There's no program that's going to eliminate that unless you eliminate people. Because again, no matter what you put in place, people are still going to do what they want to do. So the only way to fix the imperfect actions of imperfect humans is to wipe all human beings off the planet, which me and you would all be gone, and we would have a world like The Sims. You remember The Sims, that video game from back in the day? Do they still exist, The Sims? I played that when I was in like 8th grade. So if you want a perfect world, all you got to do is eh, have us be the Sims. We'll all be AI, artificial intelligence driven creatures, and we won't be around to see it or talk about it because we would have to be gone. And they don't have human will, they don't have human choice, and they don't have human thought patterns. And as soon as you give people free will, the ability to make their own choices, and the ability to think however they want to think, you're going to get problems. Why? Because you can't control these things. Can't control another person's decisions. You can't control another person's thoughts. And again, you can influence, but you cannot control. Those are two different things. So if I create a social program for mental health in my town to help anybody who's going through some mental issues and thinking about doing something crazy, maybe it may keep one or two people from doing something crazy. Maybe it will. But I can't make them not do something crazy if they still want to do it. I can create a whole bunch of homeless shelters in town. That doesn't mean all the homeless people are going to go live in the shelter and not go be out in the streets because they're used to being out in the streets. They may leave. All right. A couple of days ago, we talked about Daniel Penny and the guy, Jordan Neely, who he had, I guess, put in the chokehold in New York. He ended up passing away. Jordan Neely was offered housing by the city of New York. He was in the housing place for less than 2 weeks. He left and didn't come back. He chose to leave. You can't control human beings' choices. People make whatever choice they want to make. You cannot control it. You can influence, you can offer, but you cannot control. And those are two different things. So the utopian view is that you can control by, we do this, this, and this, that'll solve all the problems. No, it will not. Again, this has been tried. So any of you thinking that what you are proposing or what you've heard is some brand new idea, it ain't new. All right, people have been talking about this stuff for decades and they have tried. I'm not saying it doesn't offer it hasn't moved somewhat in a certain direction, but does it generally, quote unquote, work to solve the problem? Answer is no, it does not. Again, you can try. And I suggest if you want to try, if you want to be the good person and fight crime, then go ahead and fight crime. Just understand you're fighting an uphill battle. You want to be a career social worker, go ahead and do it. All right. But just understand, all right, there's only so far it can take you. All that said, let me recap my points. I'll take questions. So we're talking about mass shootings or mass violence, whether we're happening in school, the mall, whatever. Number one, we are not taking the guns away. Okay. The United States Second Amendment is foundational to this country. It keeps the government in check. It keeps the government from getting crazy. And no, we're not taking the guns away under any way, no way, shape, or form. No, I'm not with that at all. Number two, the constrained vision versus the unconstrained vision. The unconstrained vision is this idea that we create enough rules and laws and parameters. We can create this perfect society where nothing goes wrong. That is impossible because human beings are involved and none of us is perfect. Therefore, you can't create perfection with imperfection. You cannot put imperfect ingredients into the pot and come out with a perfect dish. That's impossible. Human beings are the imperfect ingredients. So the constrained vision is why the government was founded the way that it was, with a system of checks and balances to hold us in check from ourselves. We are the problem and we got to hold ourselves in check. That's why we have a system of checks and balances. That's why you have the judicial, the legislative, and the executive branch, because they check each other so that no one branch can get completely out of control with their absolute power. And we don't want to give absolute power to the government, which would be in one way that we get closer to it is by saying, hey, we want the government to create more laws and rules on us and telling us what we can and can't do. We don't want that. Again, remember the virus from a couple of years ago. That's what happens when the government has absolute power to tell you what to do and what you can't do. We don't want that. And that's the reason why a lot of people revolted against that, even when it was happening. But a lot of you mofos followed that stuff, standing 6 feet apart and putting cloth masks on your face and taking a experimental trial that you don't even know what it was because somebody told you that you're supposed to do it and the government was co-signing it. Both sides of the government, both the Democrats and the Republicans, by the way. Number three, laws and rules do not stop people who have decided they don't want to follow them. So this whole concept of let's make more laws and rules to stop people from doing criminal things. Again, people have been trying this for years. We've been enacting, the legislature, Congress, they create new laws and rules like every damn week, maybe even every day, most of which we don't even know what they're doing, most of which we don't understand the details of because the bills that they pass are hundreds of pages long. That every time the Congress sends a bill up to the president, that the bill is like hundreds of pages long. None of them are written in simple language. And they are passing these things all the time. Most of us don't even know what they are, but we talk like we do. And we don't want to give them more power to do that. This is the reason why I'm a fan of this Department of Governmental Efficiency. Who knows what they're going to do? That's allegedly going to be Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk. We'll see what they do. But making things more efficient and more clear for the everyday person to understand, I think would help. But at the same time, I believe a lot of people in the government are going to fight back against this because it hurts their careers. Number 4, politicians on both sides using dead bodies to promote their causes. Again, not a fan of this. This is how politics works in America. I don't think there's a way to stop it unless we have complete anarchy and everything falls apart. But I am pointing out the fact that they're doing this, and you should not be so strongly persuaded when politicians try to politicize a dead body, because they don't really care about the dead body. What they care about is winning political points. And this is the system that we have allowed to exist in the United States of America. And point number 5, is there an overall fix for people committing mass violence? The answer is generally no, there is not. There's not a fix. When I say there's not a fix, what I mean is there's nothing you can do that's going to stop this from happening. Why? Because humans are human. You can't stop another person from doing what they want to do. Even if what they want to do is a bad, wrong, immoral, or illegal thing that may hurt you, them, or other people. You can't stop it from happening. If there's a way to stop it, please tell me what it is. A mental health program does not stop somebody who wants to do something crazy. A social program does not stop somebody who wants to do something crazy. Free housing does not stop a homeless person from being on the street if they want to be in the street. You can't stop it. So, only way to fix the imperfect actions of imperfect humans is to not have humans. So, as long as we got humans, we're going to have imperfections. So, any of you who thought there was a solution to this and you were sold this bill of goods, usually by somebody in politics or somebody who is really good with their words, who sold you on this nonsense, allow me to wake you up. Good morning. All right. That is not possible. It will never happen. But all that said, let's take questions and comments. O-Dog on YouTube said, we have laws in the United States that get violated all the time and no punishment is executed. That's what I mean when I say laws with no teeth. Yes, there are laws that do not get enforced all the time. I would agree with that. O-Dog also said, we have enough laws now, too many if you ask me. I say fewer laws or heavier penalties is the way to go. I haven't thought about that too much to say much on it, but I will say that anything that gives more power to the government and more reach to the government, I'm not a fan of. That we want to give the government less reach and less power. That's what I would say about that. Over on Instagram, Soul Art New York says, why do you think school shootings have become more frequent? Guns have been around for a long time. I don't think they become more frequent. If someone has actual data on it, I would have to see the data. I don't think they become more frequent. I think we just know about them more because of social media. I think social media just allows them to be publicized more often, and it's not even so much about the school, because the shooting is about multiple people getting shot at the same time. Well, first of all, that happens in the hood all the time. In the hoods that Black people come from, I don't know how it is for those of you from other races, but where many Black people populate, there are mass shootings that happen all the time. They just don't make the news because nobody gives a damn. And they don't, even the Black people who claim to be all about preserving Black life, like BLM, they don't make noise when it's Black on Black shootings. They only make noise when they can blame a white person or they can blame the government. So I don't think they become more prevalent. I just think the fact that we can publicize them has become more prevalent. That's the only thing that's changed. So over on TikTok, I'm taking comments. You got a question or comment, go ahead and post it right now. Jenny said those branches all seem to be working together at this point for DJT. Well, he's not even the president right now. So if they're working together, Jenny, they're doing it for JB, which is Joe Biden. He's the president. Lindley says, never let a good crisis go to waste. That's their credo. Well, I understand why they do it. I'm not even mad enough for doing it, Lindley, because that's the system. That's the way the government works. That's the way politics work. So I can't be mad at them for that. Joseph said, when the U.S. wanted independence, it wasn't because of absolute monarchy. Well, that's one of the reasons. There are many reasons. The U.S. had a long list of grievances, and that's all documented. It wasn't one particular thing. Jeff said, all Americans need to hear your live. I agree. So let's get all Americans to listen to these lives when I'm on TikTok. Monty said that they would guard schools like they do banks. Well, what do you do if the bank teller is the one who's doing the violence? They're already inside. So then what do we do? Let me see. Chad said he's making sense. Thank you. Joseph said, isn't the government already corrupt? Depending on who you ask. What do you mean by corrupt? But depending on who you ask, sure. Danny said, that's all assumptions. I don't know what you're referring to, Dan. I need context. Beth said, why can't we have laws against the rapid clip guns and keep prosecuting parents who don't lock them up? Well, several reasons, as I already explained. I don't want to get a government power to make any more laws about anything. And I rather citizens have access to the rapid fire clip guns because that'll keep us safe from the government. That's the first thing I'm thinking about. When I see people have access to guns, I'm not worried about them using it on me. I'm worried about us not having it and the government knowing that and them doing whatever they want to us. I'm more concerned with what the government might do than what an everyday citizen might do. Further, Beth, if I walk outside today and there's a person with a gun who decides they want to use it on me, it ain't much I can do to stop them. This is just what it is. Ain't much I can do to stop them. Now, I can walk around with security and have people watching my front and my back, but generally, there's not anything I can do to stop somebody who wants to use it if they want to use it. That's just life. That's just what it is. Andrew said, unfortunately, all four branches are in lockstep with one of the four. What's the other one that I didn't mention? So I said legislative, I said judicial, and I said executive. What's the other branch you're talking about? There's only one true said that's a political argument. Okay. I don't know what you're talking about, but yes, I'm talking about politics. So yes, of course it's a political argument. Gandal said, stop teaching people that we are just animals and return to teaching the sanctity of human life. Is that what I'm teaching people, that we are just animals? I said we're human. Humans make mistakes and humans do crazy things. You can't stop humans from doing crazy things because humans are human. We're not perfect. The sanctity of human life. I never taught the sanctity of human life. So I don't know what you mean by return. I would have to get there first. Multiverse Orphan said, thank you for speaking up. Well, thank you. I speak up every day. I do these lives every day at 8 a.m. Eastern, by the way. Probably won't do one tomorrow, but Friday I'll be back. Adidas said, explain why other countries don't have this issue, smart guy. I just said it. The United States, we have more access to firearms than other countries do. And because we have more access to firearms and because we're human, more people misuse the firearms. I thought I explained that pretty cleanly when I went through it the first time. Monty said, protecting schools like a bank would help. Again, I already addressed that. What if the person inside the bank is the one pulling out the weapon? Then what? Joseph said, except the dead people don't make a trade. Well, they made a trade by being alive in humanity. You're making a trade right now by being alive. Your trade is that when you engage with other humans who you don't know what's on their mind and what they're thinking about, they might do something harmful to you. And you can't stop them. When you get in your car and drive, if somebody's drunk or they're just going crazy and they decide they're going to cross that yellow line and drive straight into you on a killing mission, what can you do to stop it? You can't. The trade-off you make by getting in the car is that somebody else driving their car might be going crazy today, or they might be drunk today, or they might just decide to not follow the rules today, and you are susceptible to that. So you're making a trade by just living life. Joseph, the food that you're going to eat today, are you growing it and cooking it and watching it every single minute from the farm to the table, as they say? If not, then you're making a trade-off. If you go to a restaurant and order food, you're making a trade-off. What they do to the food before they brought it to the table, you don't know. So you're making trade-offs all the time. All right? This device that you're watching me on, did you design it? Do you know what's inside of it? What if some programmer pushes a button right now and that device just blows up in your face and it ends your life? All right, that's a trade-off. You have no idea. So a lot of humans, so what you just said there, Joseph, I'm glad you brought up that point, because a lot of us are making a whole bunch of trade-offs. All of us, rather, are making hundreds of trade-offs every single day. We don't even realize that we're making trade-offs. We only come to think about it consciously when something like happens like this, like somebody loses their life. But you're making a ton of trade-offs. I'm in a high-rise building right now. This building is 50 stories high. I didn't build this building. I'm not an architect. I have no idea if all the floors above me might collapse right on me right now while I'm talking to you. The trade-off of me moving in here is accepting that might happen, and I'm trusting that it was built the way it's supposed to be built. So we're all making trade-offs all the time. Chad, I appreciate it. Danny said, you're saying if you unarm citizens, the government will become corrupt. You're clairvoyant. No, I'm saying if you unarm citizens, then it opens the door for government corruption. I'm not saying they absolutely will. I'm saying it opens the door for it. And that's the reason why we have the Second Amendment. This is the reason why it was in the founding documents of the country. Again, look up the founding documents and read them. There's a reason why the Second Amendment is in there. First Amendment is free speech. The Second Amendment is access, right to bear arms. There's a reason why it was the Second Amendment. So I'm not saying, I'm reiterating what's already in the documents. And there's a reason why, as I said, reason why it's in there. Carmelo said 4 National Guards standing around the school can prevent it. Not if the student is already in the school. The student with the gun is already in the school. What's the National Guard going to do? Shooting happened inside. People who are already let in. Brittany said, because criminals follow the law. Right. What's going on, Brittany? Good morning. A free mind said, imperfect and flawed, emotionally reactionary. These two things makes humans dysfunctional at best. Yeah, well, depending on who you ask and how you want to look at it, a free mind, all humans are dysfunctional. Honestly. Joseph said, we should just have no laws since they don't work. No, I think laws do work. Most people follow the law, but not everybody. Again, this is the trade-off. Mike said most school shootings use their parents' guns. I think you would have to come up with some factual data to make that claim. I get what you're saying. And let's see. All right, so some people believe Kamala has a gun, some people don't. I'm skeptical. Renata said, I mean, her husband may own one. Okay, maybe, but she didn't say her husband. She said she does. And then she got asked, do you own a gun? She said yes. He said, and the interviewer said, have you ever fired the gun? And she said yes, at gun range. So she didn't say anything about her husband. She said she did. West said, looking for votes after saying she's going to take everyone's guns away. Well, then she said she wasn't going to. So she said she was going to do a mandatory buyback program years ago. And then she said, we're not going to take guns away because I own a gun. So this is one of the challenges with Kamala. She was giving conflicting messages and it was confusing people. Robert said, we got the same last name. You got any family from Alabama? Not that I know of, but maybe. You never know, Robert. Tim McCrae said, huge element of the problem is fatherless families. Okay, fair enough. Maybe. And Shell said, most gun owners can't take a gun apart. Doesn't mean you own one. Okay, that's fine. But at the same time, he knew that he was going to have that attention on him, and he was talking about it, Governor Walz, and he knew he was on camera, and he didn't know how to use that. He didn't know how to use that gun, so it didn't look good, Shell. So you are, what way would I say this? Logically, you are correct, Shell. That just because someone can't take a gun apart does not mean that you don't own a gun. You are logically correct. At the same time, does it look good when you say you do, and you know everybody's watching, and you know you're on camera, and then you can't take the gun apart? That doesn't look good if that's the last thing that we heard from you is that you own a gun. It's just like if somebody's talking about global warming, but they're going to give a speech in the middle of a snowstorm, even though we know global warming is not about necessarily snow or cold weather. That global warming means something different. But if you're going to give a speech about global warming, it would make more sense to give that speech in the middle of a heat wave when it's 90 degrees outside and everybody's sweating than giving a speech during the middle of a snowstorm. Because the connection, when we hear the word warm, there's a mental connection most human beings make about that, which is heat and hot. So if you give a speech about global warming and it's cold outside, it's going to confuse a whole lot of people, because you got to remember, most people might not be as smart as you. So does the visual of something matter? Absolutely, it does. Sandra said, even police say they're corrupt police. Yes, they're corrupt everything. They're corrupt TikTokers. Right? They're corrupt everything. And corrupt is a relative term. People throw that word around. You could call somebody corrupt and they would say they're not corrupt. So who's right and who's wrong? So Charles said it reduces overall access. Proof of look at countries like Australia. All right. Well, I'm glad you brought that country up, Charles. Look at what happened there during the virus a few years ago. Then you tell me something else about why we should compare ourselves to that country. I don't want what what was happening there during the virus. If you don't, you should read about it. It wasn't pretty. Let's just put it that way. At least not for the citizens. It was great for the government, not good for the citizens. Sandra said, males have some kind of tick that gives them black and white thinking with no nuance. That's not a tick, Sandra. Is that men tend to lean more logically, women tend to lean more emotionally. And that doesn't mean that men can't be emotional and that women can't be logical. It's just that this is the way human beings are wired. Men tend to lean more towards logic and rationality, whereas women tend to lean more towards feelings and emotions. That's not a tick. It's just humanity. Jenna said, I love that these lives are so early and consistent. Me too. Charles said, Walsh is in the military. Of course, he's been trained on how to use a Walls is his name, Walz. Of course, he's been trained on how to use a firearm. Maybe. I wouldn't say, of course. Again, did you see the video of him trying to use that firearm? He didn't know what he was doing. So Stacey said, if you don't want interaction with law enforcement, don't break the law or don't do anything that will draw their attention. You don't have to be breaking the law to get their attention. Big Paul said cops are criminals. Some of them are, not all of them. Carrie B said, wow, brother, I guess you worship Clarence Thomas and Tim Scott. What does that even mean? Renata said, that's what happened with the police. Everything that you're saying. Yeah, no. Bose Fails said, would you retain the same morals if you became a politician? If I became a politician, well, first of all, for me to become a politician, I would have to start. I've said this over and over again. One of the reasons I would not get into politics is because you have, in the United States of America, to be successful in politics, you have to lie on a consistent basis. You can't tell people the full truth and the objective truth and succeed in politics. You can tell them, but you wouldn't succeed. Because you got to tell people enough stuff that makes them satisfied and feel good. But if you told them the other side of the same thing you just told them, then they would not feel good anymore. So I wouldn't be successful in politics. So I would never even try. Jenna said, absolute power is scary. That's the whole concept of state versus total government. Well, yes, exactly. And again, if y'all saw what happened in Australia and their neighboring country, NZ, I got to be careful what countries' names I say here because TikTok is giving me warnings when I say certain countries and other countries, I can say it. But what they did with the virus a few years ago was crazy. If y'all thought it was crazy here in America, you go read about what they were doing over there. So that person who brought up, well, look at Australia. They have less issues with guns than America. Okay, fine. But look at what else they got. All right, that's the part that you left out. Renata said the cops started out as a helper, but turned out to be like killers. Well, yes, I get your point, Renata, but there's a whole lot of cops out there who are not doing anything bad or negative, and they are actually upstanding citizens that are serving the community. So we can't just pull out anecdotal examples and say the cops are bad. Fred said, so you support a person that wants to be a king. So Fred Baker Bay, first of all, when you start a response to somebody's talking by saying, so that's a tell for what we call cognitive dissonance, also a straw man point. So you just ask a straw man question. I don't even know who the person is that you're referring to. I never mentioned the word king this entire time, and nor did I say I supported anybody. So your question is a complete straw man, a complete non sequitur, and your cognitive dissonance is fully exposed. So thank you for giving me that example so I could use you and show everybody else. Carrie Bell says, young black Republican. Are you talking about you? Miss GVS said, that's hilarious. I don't know what I said that was hilarious, but hopefully it was something good. Mike Mays says, military, didn't they fail the last several audits? I think I heard about that, but the military does a good job of doing military stuff. Now, audit is a more financial thing, but as far as defending the country, I think our military does a pretty good job. I think I had to give them credit for that. The HG said, parents stop letting kids play video games everywhere they kill for points. Yeah, I've heard people say that the video games help. Kateria, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right, said, just joined the first time. I like what you're saying. Thank you. Appreciate it. Altered Script said, there was the first female school that was new. First ever? This is the first ever in history? I don't know if it's the first ever. Maybe the first one we know about. Traditional says, unfortunately, kids have to be, yeah, I mean, it is unfortunate, but there's no way to completely guarantee that this can never happen again. And see, this is it. And what I'm explaining here, folks, this is the reason why I can't be a politician. Who's going to vote for me if I come out and say that? Excuse me. If I'm on the campaign trail and I announce, hey, let's say I'm on the campaign trail and I'm running for president in 2028 and it's October. So the election's coming up in a few weeks and there's a school shooting. Now, my opponent says one thing, and I say, well, hey, it's unfortunate there was a school shooting, but first of all, we're not going to eliminate the Second Amendment. We're going to let people have access to their guns. And then a reporter says, well, Dre, how are we going to stop the next shooting from happening? And I say, well, we can't stop it. All right? This is just humanity. Humans are humans, and sometimes humans are going to do bad things. As soon as I say that, my campaign is over. I have no chance of winning the election. You can't win an election talking like that. So this is the reason why I can't be a politician. So for people asking, there's your answer. All right. Tarf says the right does the same if it's a left-wing liberals' personal accountability. Well, again, you can't preach personal accountability and win an election. You can preach it when you're doing what I'm doing. You can't be in an election doing it. Britt said, we're all adults here. Control your own emotions. Yes. Ideally, that's what we would all do. Appreciate the gift, Tarf. The fest burst. I don't know what that is, but thank you. Mike says, not a problem. As a school teacher, I have a different view. This is embarrassing. What's embarrassing? What are you embarrassed about, Mike? Please give us some context. Ryan says it's uniquely an American phenomenon. Why? As I explained, we have more access to firearms than most other countries do. As citizens, citizens don't have access to firearms in other countries the way we do here. And the trade-off of giving everyone access to firearms is that people will misuse them. That's how it works. The trade-off of the fact that you can advertise pharmaceuticals here is that people will get on them that don't need them and get addicted to them. That's a trade-off. Trade-off of our food system and that we put so many chemicals in the foods and sell them for so cheap is that people are going to be eating them and we're going to have obesity. This is the trade-off. We got a lot of trade-offs here in America. So many of the trade-offs of our freedom and capitalism is that they get abused and misused, sometimes on purpose and sometimes not. This is just humanity, folks. If you want to go to a place where these trade-offs don't exist and the government has much more control over how you live and what you do, there are plenty of options. All right, just open up the map. All right, there are plenty of choices other than America. But last I checked, most of you still live here, despite the things that you're saying. All right, Kendrick said, it's a huge problem. And one solution is schools need to be better protected. Again, what do you do if the shooter is already in the school? What if they're a student? What do you do then? So Britt said, I think if parents can be held liable, forcing more safety measures to raise a concern for behaviors. Yes, I think parents are responsible. You got to keep if you got a firearm, you got to keep your firearm away from the kids. I do believe that. And the parents should be held responsible if their kid gets access to something they're not supposed to. Mike said, why have laws at all? I guess. What a smart take. Yeah, okay. Aaliyah is a baddie said, so should we just get over it? America is the only country that has this problem. Generally speaking, Aaliyah, yes, you should just get over it. That's right. You should just get over it. Now, I wouldn't say it that way, but I think I just spent the last hour eloquently explaining how there are trade-offs to humanity. The trade-off is people will misuse things. That's just what it is. The problem is, again, this is the reason why I can't be a politician, everybody. Those of y'all asking why won't I get in politics, I'm explaining to you. I can't be in politics because this is the way that I talk. And as soon as I say stuff like this, I'm going to lose a whole bunch of votes. Nobody's going to support me, so I can't win. And America is the only country that has this problem because we also have the freedom. See, the trade-off of the problem, Aaliyah, is that we have the freedom that you can get access to a firearm in a week if you want to. The trade-off of everyone having access to firearms is somebody will misuse a firearm. This is just what it is. So do you want a situation where nobody can get a firearm? Okay. Problem is, if the government becomes not even corrupt, but what's the word? If the government just gets out of hand, you have no way of deterring them from being more out of hand because they know that you don't have any weapons. So again, which way do you want it? You want it this way, you want it that way. Which problem do you want? Pick a struggle, as people like to say. Either way, there's going to be a challenge. Which one do you want? You want the challenge of a random citizen doing something crazy? You want the challenge of the government having absolute power over you? One or the other. But there's no perfect outcome. And a lot of human beings, and again, this is the reason why I say that men tend to lean towards logic and rationality. Women tend to lean more towards emotions and feelings. That when I logically and rationally explain that to a lot of people don't like hearing it, even though it is absolutely true. If I'm wrong, somebody tell me that I'm wrong. And tell me what is the right way of looking at this. Because there ain't one. That's the point. And this is the reason why I can't get in politics. Because the right way is you have to play around with what is actually objectively true. And again, politicians have to do this for a living. And it's got kind of has to be in your bones. Barack Obama had it in his bones. George W. Bush had it. Clinton had it. Bill Clinton, that is. Donald Trump has it. Kamala Harris did not have it. That's the reason why she lost. And I don't have it. That's the reason why I would never get in politics. I don't have that ability to kind of talk around subjects in a way that I know I'm not giving you the full truth, but I'm completely okay with it. All right. To be a good politician, you have to be able to do that. I don't have that ability. I'd rather give it to you straight and not care that you're not happy with it. But that's not good for politics. It's good for my line of work. It's not good for politics. Does everybody understand that? Some of you seem to be looking for perfect outcomes. There aren't any. Japan, Australia, Canada, UK, etc. have done it. Okay. Do you live in one of those countries? Which one? Ryan said, an impossibly smooth brain opinion to hold. LOL. I don't know if you're talking about me or somebody else. Alter Scrap said, there are still weapons even if you take away firearms. Yes, of course. But the firearm is the most, I would say, the most efficient way to take somebody out if you wanted to. Jenna said, people will do what they will do unless the consequences are so harsh or significant. Not exactly, Jenna, because you can have a very harsh consequence for taking somebody's life. Excuse me, doesn't mean people won't still do it. Harsh consequence, you can get the penalty yourself. You can get your own life taken for taking somebody else's life. People will still do it. So again, human beings are human beings. You cannot control human beings. Alan said the suit is rough. I don't know if that's a compliment or a insult. Explain what do you mean by rough? Hello, people said we are not and cannot evolve until psychedelic mushrooms are our basic food again. Okay. I don't know what to say to that. Jenna said consequences have to persuade people to act properly. Again, you can try to persuade people. You cannot guarantee that you persuade another person to do anything. Sounds good, Jenna, but that's not how humanity works. If that was the case, then we would already have all the rules in place that will make everybody act perfectly. Where are they? All right. Again, this stuff has been tried, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you, some of these comments I'm reading, some of you seem to think that these are new ideas that y'all are throwing out here. They're not new. People have been trying this for decades. Mike says about removing opportunities to cause mass shootings. How can you remove an opportunity to cause a mass shooting? Mass just means 2 or more people, by the way. So if I go to the grocery store and there's 500 people in the grocery store, well, there's an opportunity. How are you going to remove that? You're going to have security at the door that says only one person allowed in the grocery store at a time. What about the mall? What about a like a concert or an outdoor concert or just a place that a lot of people just show up? What about Times Square, New York? What about walking around downtown Miami? There are plenty of places where there are multiple people just gathered together. What about a soccer game? You can't stop this. Some kids, 10-year-old soccer game. There's 100 parents there watching the game. There's no guaranteed way to stop these things from happening. And again, many of you seem to have this utopian idea that there's a way to guarantee that these things can't happen. There is no way. Again, folks, these things y'all throwing out here are not new. Brent says he offering sensible gun reform. All right, explain what sensible gun reform means. That word there, sensible, very relative term. What do you mean by sensible? And what your version of sensible is probably not everybody else's version of sensible. Traditional all day said people are people, you cannot control them, period. Yes, you can. You can influence people, but you can't control people. And people who want to follow the law will follow the law, and people who don't won't. That's it. And a lot of people just don't want to accept that. Holt said, restore the nuclear family. Yes, that'd be great. Mike said the Second Amendment can be changed or limited. The Constitution can be changed before. Mike, I agree with you. I'm saying I don't want the Second Amendment changed or limited. That's what I'm saying. So you're saying it can be. I'm agreeing, yes, it can be. I'm saying it should not be. Disabled Marine vet said, only way to avoid most violence is more guns has been proven and worked. Well, see, that's a different way of looking at it. And it's been proven and works. I don't know what you mean by proven, but I get your point. I get your approach. If I'm walking down the street and I know everybody has a gun and I know I got one, then we're all going to respect each other because we all know that we could each take each other out. On that angle, disabled Marine vet, I agree with you. K3, what do you mean? What are you referring to? Greg Canella says, government has nuclear bombs. What does Euro 22 do to keep them in check? Well, for them to use it, they would have to take out a whole town. They can't take out one person with a nuclear bomb. K3, you're spamming my comments. You're going to get kicked out. Actually, I got to kick you out now. You spam my comments. Don't spam my comments by posting the same thing over and over again. Okay, so Brent says, you are increasing gun regulations to prevent people to acquire automatic rifles. No, and you said, so you are. So what did I tell you all about somebody starting their comment with, so you are? or so you are saying. It's a tell for cognitive dissonance, a tell for a straw man argument or a straw man question. Straw man is when someone takes something that you said, rephrases it into something that you didn't say, and then they pose it as a question as if you need to address it, as if they're repeating what you said. That's not what I said. So he says, so you are. So as soon as someone says, so you are, or so basically, or just so, what they're going to do is say what they claim that you said, but in a different way. And then they're going to ask you to respond to it. So that's called a straw man. It's a common logical fallacy that people use when they're experiencing cognitive dissonance. In other words, when what they're hearing or seeing is in strong conflict with what they believe, which is fine. If what I'm saying is in conflict with what you believe, that's fine. You're free to disagree with me, but don't throw a straw man question at me because I'm going to point it out as I just did. Brent says, as someone who has seen the work on the V word, I can share with you that it was for reducing risk. Yeah, of course. Of course it was. I'm not even saying that it wasn't, but come on. You did work on it. So I understand your position, Brent, but please. Let's see. 6. All right. I lost my position. Where was I? I lost my spot a minute ago, but all right, here we go. So bearded that bird says stuffy nose feel better. Thank you. Probably from my child. So Adam said pandering is what you're talking about. You mean with politicians? Politicians have to pander. You cannot be successful in the United States system of politics without pandering. It is impossible. So if I became a politician, I would be pandering every day. It's the only way I can stay in my job. So don't get mad at politicians when they pander. They have to. Tony said weird because Harris has been a politician for years. Yeah, but she was in a different form of politics. To win big elections like the presidential election, you have to have this ability to kind of talk around a concept without quite giving them the full answer if you know it and sound completely confident in doing it. Kamala doesn't quite have that ability. Barack had it. Bill Clinton had it. Donald Trump has it. Joe Biden kind of sort of has it. He's not great at it, but he's been around for so long that he's seen it often. I mean, he worked with Obama for 2 terms. Kamala doesn't quite have it. You can see the wheels turning in her head while she's talking. She doesn't have that gift of gab is what she doesn't have. Think about Bill Clinton. Think about Barack. Think about George W. Bush. Think about Trump. These people have the gift of gab. They can just go and go and go and talk and make everything they say sound good, even if they're saying some bullshit. Kamala doesn't have that ability. It's one of the main reasons why she lost. Winning a presidential election is a public speaking competition, and she's not a good public speaker. She was a prosecutor working for the government, and she had all the resources on her side. Is a different game than when you're Trump, for example, going up against the system as opposed to having the system behind you. She had the system behind her for a very long time. She was a prosecutor. So that means she's working for the state, and they're putting all their resources behind her to try to convict whoever they're going up against. That's a whole different game than when you're Trump and you're going up against the system and they're all trying to stop you and you got to beat them anyway. 2 completely different skill sets. And it showed in this last election. Jade says society is sick. Well, some of it, not all of it. Generally, society is very healthy. Yes, there are some crazy people out there, but generally, it ain't like you feel like your life is on the line every time you leave your house, do you? Tony said, you're saying men aren't emotion driven is hilarious. Well, Tony, that's not what I said. So again, let's do this again. All right, here's another example of the straw man. So Tony starts our comment with you saying, all right, that's not what I said. I said men tend to lean more logical and rational. Females tend to lean more emotional and feeling based. And I also said right after that, this doesn't mean that men can't be emotional, and it doesn't mean that females cannot be logical. Did I not say that? Did I say that like 3 times already today? Did anybody hear me say that? I'm pretty sure that I said that. Now, Tony, I'm pretty sure you heard me because you're responding to something that I said, but you're straw manning me by rephrasing it into something that I did not say. So this is, again, another common logical fallacy. There's a website out there called yourlogicalfallacyis.com. All of you should go to it and read it so that you can start catching people and catch yourself when you try to throw this bullshit at people. The thing is that most of the time when people do this, it works. But see, I'm aware of logical fallacies because I tend to be a very logical and rational thinker, so I can call people out when they do it. Most people don't notice it when it gets used against them. So Nicole said, have you ever read a book called Word Magic by Paul Chang? No, I haven't. What do you think about it? Why are you asking? but it sounds like a good book, so I'm gonna look it up right now. Word Magic. So I just started reading Steve Madden's book. I don't even see the book on Audible. Whoever left that comment, Nicole, I'm gonna look it up on Amazon. I usually listen to books on audio, but I'll read a physical book every now and then. I got a good number of them. Word Magic, Pao Chang. All right, I see it right here. The Power and Occult Definitions of Words. Okay, this is an interesting looking book. Okay, so here's the book that just got recommended to me. Word Magic by Pao Chang on Amazon. Has 1,180 reviews, 4.8 stars. I'm added to my cart on Amazon. So I'm gonna get that book. So thank you for the recommendation. Let's see. Stephanie said, I've always thought an NFL game would be the perfect opportunity, but still buy my ticket. Well, the thing is, you can't get into the stadium with a firearm. I'm talking about an open air game, like your kid's soccer game at the park. The NFL game, you can't get in with a firearm, or a basketball game, not like that. So an enclosed place, they have security check. I'm talking about an open place. Like I could just walk into the mall right now. Might be 300 people in the mall. I can do whatever I want to do. Ain't nobody's checking me when I walk in. That's what I mean. Adam said we can only pick the best possible solution, which won't be an absolute solution. Exactly. Now, see, that's usually Adam. I'm assuming Adam is a man. See, men can think like this. Not all men, but there are men who understand what I'm saying and they can accept it. Not all men can accept it. A lot of women don't like hearing it. I'm not saying there aren't women out there who agree with me as well, but men tend to be able to understand this. As soon as they hear it, they get it. They're like, okay, you're right. Lisa said, what about the fools on the streets of Europe with machetes, no gun to protect yourself? Yes, exactly. Sitting ducks. Exactly. When people know that you don't have a way to protect yourself, they will take advantage of you. And the government is run by what? People. So don't think just because someone's in the government and they got on a suit doesn't mean that they won't take advantage of you if they think they can. They will. And we have plenty of examples in history of this happening. Tony said there are plenty of other countries without this problem. We just look stupid. Okay, but you still live here. So if you really thought it was a serious problem, which country would you move to and why? And what are you leaving behind when you go to America? And we already explained. It's a trade-off. Those countries have trade-offs too. You just are not thinking about them right now. You only focus on this issue, which is the gun issue, but there are a whole lot of other things that are benefits to being in America as opposed to those other countries that you're not considering when you say that. And we know that when people say things like this, and Tony, I'm not even making this about you personally, but people tend to say things like this because it sounds good on the internet. But if you really want to know what a person thinks, don't listen to what they're saying. Don't look at how their lips move. Watch their feet. Watch how they move. I hear a lot of people in America, Americans, talking shit about how terrible America is and how dumb we are and how other countries do it better. Yet here you are still living in America. So if I want to know what you really think, I'm just looking at your actions. I'm not listening to your words. Digital Whisperer says we need police officers in all schools, public or private. The first few years should be assigned. I wouldn't have a problem with that. The challenge is a lot of people don't want to be police because it's been demonized to be a police officer. That's one of the issues of police. A lot of people don't want to be cops because anytime a cop does something wrong, it gets plastered all over the news as if cops are bad people. Now people don't want to be cops because if they do their job, they look bad. Which is why when Trump said, I'm going to give full immunity to police, which a president is not even legally able to do, the concept that he was communicating was, I want police to be able to do their job and people to feel proud about being a cop and people to feel safe because you know that there are cops. That's what he was actually communicating when he said that, even though the president does not actually have the power to give immunity to cops. Amber said the government doesn't care about hurting innocent people. Now, some people say that, and in some cases you are correct. Not all cases, but in some cases you are absolutely right. I'm not arguing with your point. Hold gun manufacturers accountable. Tony, I say no. That's like holding McDonald's accountable if I become obese from eating McDonald's. McDonald's didn't make me eat it. They just sold it to me because I decided to buy it. Let's see. Renata said it's called pimping. Carrie says she always seemed lost. Sometimes she did sound lost. Yes, I agree. Tony said winning a Senate race is nothing. Tony, there's another straw man question. I'm just pointing out there's a straw man now. I'm not going to explain it anymore. M.H. Thomas said we already go through checks to get a firearm and any type of CDL. Mental health is issues today. Yes, you go through checks, but the checks are not so stringent that somebody could still be kind of crazy and still get the firearm. MH, would you agree? Let's see. Roosevelt Green. Are you talking about me? Oh, thank you. Tony said, if I could, I would absolutely move. It's just not an option. Well, it is an option. Maybe you have decided not to take that option, but it is an option. I mean, you can get a passport, you can get an airplane ticket, and you can move. Let's see. Not everything is a straw man. It can be a question asking you to expand on the statement that you said. I didn't say everything is a straw man. As you see, I've answered 98% of the questions here that are direct questions. But when someone does a straw man, I point it out. Straw man is a common communication tactic that people use when they hear something they disagree with, as I explained and pointed out. And if someone wants me to expound on a statement that I said, then they can say, hey, can you explain more what you said when you said blank? But if you rephrase what I said into something that I didn't say and then make it into a question, that is literally the definition of what a straw man is. I know what I'm talking about, Gotti Head Hunter. That's why I'm the one doing this live and you're the one in the comments. But if you can explain it better than me, then do your own live and explain. Gotti said you had to make an inference on what people say sometimes. Well, I don't have to do anything. I can do whatever I want to do. But again, I've explained these things many times. I've been doing these lives specifically on TikTok for months now. So you might be new around here, but I've explained all these things in detail multiple times. You can see the replays on YouTube. Renata said, we are obviously a great country and people are willing to die to get here. Yes, this is still the best option. Every country has trade-offs. There are no perfect places to go. There are no utopian scenarios nowhere in the world. But America is the best option. That's why everybody comes here and nobody leaves. Even the people in America complaining about America and talking shit about America, you see how they come up with reasons why they can't leave. It's not an option, right? But if it was as terrible as you say it is, or as terrible as people... Not that they say it is, as terrible as people talk about it, as if this is just a terrible country. We look stupid. We can't fix this. We can't fix that. But nobody leaves. At all that talking, nobody leaves. Bearded at birth says, a person who hardly reads books, what would be a good book to read? Give me a subject or a topic, and I'll give you a recommendation. Tony said, it absolutely would work. It's clear you aren't interested in any reform. Well, what do you mean by reform? Again, and what do you mean by work? When you say it would work, what do you mean by work? Work meaning what? Meaning there would be no more gun violence, there'd be no more mass shootings. And when you say reform, what are you referring to? So many of these terms are slippery terms that people throw out. And again, it's not about anybody personally, but people throw out these slippery terms that can be interpreted in many different ways. I need you to clearly define what you mean by these terms. And then give me examples of people already trying this, because, again, nothing any of you is saying here is a new idea. It's been tried by people who do this for a living. Why didn't it work when they did it? Why do you think that you all on TikTok leaving comments, you have this brand new idea? They ain't new. So this is what I'm trying to figure out. How did any of you figure this out? And people who work there can't figure it out. Someone said, it's pointing out something you've implied. I don't imply things, Tony. That's the thing about my style of communication. I don't imply. I say directly and clearly exactly what I mean. I don't have to imply anything. Now, in some instances, depending on who I'm talking to, if I'm on the stage giving a keynote speech, for example, I may imply certain things because I don't want to say them so directly on somebody else's platform. But this right here is my platform. I don't imply things unless it's a word that I can't use. So if I'm talking about the R country that's at conflict right now with the U country, I'm implying those countries because y'all know what I'm talking about, because I can't say their names because TikTok told me not to say their names. Yesterday, when I did a whole live talking about the bald-headed guy with the initials AT who got kicked off all social media, I implied his name because TikTok told me I can't say his name. So I will imply certain things, but I'll explain to you exactly what I'm implying when I'm implying. But I don't imply anything, Tony. So you must be new around here, but I have no need to imply. I am very direct. I am very to the point, and no one is ever confused as to what I'm referring to when I say things. I think I'm pretty good at that. I've been doing this for a long time. Lisa said, thanks for explaining the straw man. You're welcome. And there are websites out there to give you lists of logical fallacies. So if y'all were to go to one of these websites, you would be surprised. I think maybe some of you who are interested in this type of stuff, this is kind of stuff that I'm interested in. So on this site, and there's a bunch of them, I'm just giving you one that I found. It's called yourlogicalfallacyis.com. So it looks like this. And it basically, look, the first one, straw man. So let me read it. So since we're talking about the straw man, so since this came up. So when you go to this website, it'll explain what a straw man is and it give you examples of it. And when I read through this site, it was funny to me because I noticed that people use these things all the time. They don't know they're using logical fallacies, but people use these as a way of kind of manipulating and maneuvering a conversation. And again, because I'm a very logical thinker, a super logical thinker, I notice these things in people all the time. And I'm able to call it out in the moment when it happens. So some of you may notice it, but then you won't realize it till like the next day. Like, damn, that's what that person did to me. But I notice it when they do it. So anyway, straw man, you misrepresented someone's argument to make it easier to attack. That's what a straw man is. You misrepresent what someone said, and then you attack something that they didn't say, and then you ask them to respond to something that they didn't say. And then you get the conversation going where you wanted to go instead of where they were actually taking it. And again, here's the reason why the straw man works, because most people take the bait. I don't take the bait. That's the reason why it doesn't work on me, because I notice it and I call it out like, no, that's some bullshit. I didn't say that. But most of the time when you use a straw man, people will respond to the straw man. And now you got the conversation going this way when they were trying to take the conversation that way. So let me read the explanation. By exaggerating, misrepresenting, or just completely fabricating someone's argument, which is what I'm calling out, it's much easier to present your own position as being reasonable. But this kind of dishonesty serves to undermine honest, rational debate. So that's the example. So that's the explanation, the example. So after Will said that we should put more money into health and education, Warren responded by saying he was surprised that Will hates our country so much that he wants to leave it defenseless by cutting military spending. See, that's a straw man. So if somebody says something like, if I'm talking to you and you say something like, we should put more money into health and education, and then I say, I'm surprised you hate our country so much you want to cut military spending. Why would you want to do that? And then if you answer that, if you respond to that question and start debating me on that point, you took the bait, and I just successfully strawmanned you into what I want to talk about rather than what you were actually talking about. And again, people are really good. People do this as a common communication habit, and they don't even know that they're using a straw man. It's just a normal, natural thing that people do when they hear something that they disagree with. Instead of just saying, hey, I disagree with your point, and here's why. Because I think this. So you said this, but I think this. See, if you just said that, we can have a logical back and forth. And maybe I just think this way, and you think that way. And that's completely fine. We don't have to agree. But if you misrepresent my point and turn it into something else, then I'm going to call it out. Now, again, 99% of the time when you do that, the person you do it to won't notice. I just happen to be the 1% of people who notices. So Godey said, since you talk about fallacies, you should know that debaters invite straw mans. Well, if it's useful to them, absolutely they do, of course. If a straw man can be used to your advantage, then you use it. But if it can't, then you ignore it or you change the subject. Politicians do this all the time. Good politicians will see the straw man being used against them, completely avoid the straw man because they don't have time to explain a straw man like I just did on the debate stage because they're on the clock. And then what they'll do is they'll just change the subject, talk about something else. Donald Trump does it all the time. Obama did it. Biden did it. Kamala kind of did it. George W. did it. Bill Clinton did it. They all do it. If you pay attention, you'll start noticing this stuff. Someone said to give you a chance to present steel man arguments. If you're on a debate team, yes, but in politics, you don't have a chance. You don't have time to do that. In politics, you don't have time. So let's see. A couple more comments, then we'll wrap this up. Monica said, if not guns, knives, or something else, but there's a will, there's a way. Yes, if somebody wants to do something crazy, they will. Yes, that's true. Tony said, holding manufacturers accountable has not been tried. So what you talking about? I am in disagreement with the concept of holding manufacturers accountable. Accountable for what? If I own a gun store, Tony, let's say not me, let's say some third party, Mike owns a gun store. You walk in the store, you buy a gun and you use it to kill 10 people. And then I walk in the store right after you and I use my gun to just defend my family and never use it illegally. Why should we hold the gun manufacturer accountable? He sold me one. I didn't use it wrongly. You use yours wrongly. So why is he responsible for that? You're responsible. You made that choice. You're a fully grown adult with a fully developed brain. You decide to make a bad decision with that item. The gun manufacturer is not responsible for you making a bad decision with an item that you could have used any way that you wanted to. That is not his responsibility. That's your responsibility. So no, we're not holding them accountable. Same way, again, if I become obese and die early because I'm fat and out of shape, we can't hold McDonald's accountable. All right. They didn't tell me to keep eating McDonald's every day. They just sold it to me because I decided to buy it. So I'm against the concept of holding them accountable for something that you decided to do. Liberty versus slave. I can't say the name of that country with the letter C. I'm wary of saying their name. Cheyenne said, we should have a law that requires all schools to have metal detectors. Many schools do have metal detectors. Maybe some don't, but many of them do. My school had one. Brayton Garrett said, what website is it? It's called yourlogicalfallacyis.com. Just look up Your Logical Fallacy online and you'll see the website. It comes up. Uncle Stingray said, classic Dunning-Kruger. I'm extremely logical, LOL. Okay. If you think I'm not logical, then tell me what I didn't get logically correct. Faithology says, I was getting described what I see people doing TikTok lives, but I didn't have a word for it. People do it all. People do it in everyday conversation. It's just, again, if you don't notice it and you don't know what it is and you can't explain it, then it may just go over your head. It may just what's the word? It may just pass by and you don't notice it. But it can be really annoying when you're talking to someone and you're trying to get a point across and they keep kind of taking the conversation in a different direction that you're not trying to go. The website is called yourlogicalfallacyis.com. That's the name of the website that I was showing you all. Smash Ball said, I feel like politics is a game of, well, it is. It is a game of lies. You have to lie to be a successful politician. It's impossible to succeed in politics without lying. It's impossible. In America, that is. I don't know about other countries. Billy said, thank you for your service. Thank you. What service? This? Thank you. Kateria said, you are teaching this 65-year-old woman something. Thank you. You're welcome. That's what I like to do. Tony said, it's funny you think Trump is a good public speaker. He is a good public speaker. Now, you might not like what he says, but is he good at getting it across? Yes, he is. Now, see, there's a difference between you agreeing with what somebody says and you believing that they're good at saying it. So I could say, let's get an example. So some of you listening to this, I'm impartial, but some of you probably didn't like Barack Obama's policies, but you can't say that he wasn't a good speaker. He was a hell of a speaker. He's an amazing speaker. Barack Obama is probably the best political speaker I've ever seen. Now, you may not agree with the things that he was pushing out there and the things that he wanted to do or what he ended up doing, but was he good at saying it? Yes, he was. He's one of the best political speakers we've seen. I think in my lifetime, he was the best. The ones that I've seen, let's say between Clinton, then Bush, and the people that they beat, Obama, Trump, the other Clinton, Kamala, Barack was number one. I would probably say Trump number two. Completely different styles, but they're both excellent speakers because they both get their point across. Everyone gets exactly what they're saying, and they were able to move millions of people to vote for them. How can you say he's not a good speaker? Someone said it is obvious. I don't know what was being referred to there. I won't respond to that one. Let's see. Lisa said, I know you're about to end the live. So glad I found you. Thanks for the intelligent discourse. Thank you. Tony said, Obama is an amazing speaker. Agreed. So, again, Donald Trump's an amazing speaker. He's a great speaker. Biden was okay. I didn't think Biden was that good. I think he had a lot of experience, so he got better because of his years of experience. But natural great speakers, Barack Obama, I will put number one. I will put Trump number two. I'll put Bill Clinton number three. I'll put George W. Bush number four and Joe Biden number five of people who actually won the presidency. And the people who lost, I'm trying to remember who lost. So Al Gore was pretty good. He was pretty good. Kamala, I put at the bottom of the list. She would absolutely be last. Hillary Clinton was better than Kamala. John McCain was actually pretty good. Kerry was okay. He wasn't that great. I'm missing somebody. Somebody else I'm not remembering. Reagan, I'm not that old. I'm talking about people I've seen in my lifetime. JFK is before my time. Faithology said, I don't like Trump, but he's a master at messaging. Doesn't resonate with me, but he found his fans. Yes, exactly. So this is the kind of objectivity that most people can't accept, that you can disagree with somebody, but still say that they're pretty good at what they're doing. Like, I disagree with what McDonald's sells, but I can't say that they don't do a good job of selling it. I don't eat McDonald's, but I can't say that they're not good. They're great business. Business-wise, McDonald's is amazing. I don't agree with. I don't want my daughter or my sister or my wife or my mom to be doing OnlyFans, but I can't knock the fact that OnlyFans does excellent business. There's a market out there for them. I can't say that they don't do good business just because I disagree with what they're doing. I wouldn't want any woman in my life doing OnlyFans, and I'm not a customer of OnlyFans, but I can't say they're not a good business. Again, I may disagree with Obama or disagree with Trump, but I can't say they're not good speakers. They're excellent speakers. That's why they're able to get their message out to so many people and galvanize such a big audience. And again, this is what I mean. When people tend to disagree with things, they tend to not be able to give those things credit. And this is the lack of logical and objective conversation that most people don't have the ability to do this when they hear something that they don't like. There's only, I would say, of all the people that I meet, just in my experience, I would estimate maybe about 10% of people have this ability, that they can dislike something, completely disagree with it, but still give it credit. Most people can't do that. Someone said Biden. Well, hey, he won an election. He got himself up there, and he did go through the primary. So how we do it, we got to give him credit. He went through a primary. He beat a whole bunch of competitors, and he won the ticket. So he got to be good at something. We got to give him credit for something. I don't think he's that good, but he was good enough to beat everybody who went against him, including Kamala Harris. By the way, she was running for that ticket too. She didn't win. Captain Kurt said Obama is the go-to public speaking. I didn't agree with him on 90%. Yeah, amongst politicians, yes, Obama is the best. He's the best since, let's say, 1992. No, not 90. Yeah, 92. That's when Clinton came in, right? 92. Okay, a couple more, and then we'll wrap this up. All right, so Tony said it speaks to people's intelligence, not the speaker's ability. Tony, that's the whole point of public speaking. Point of public speaking is to get your message across to your audience. So if I'm talking to I'm talking to you all right now, there's a certain way I need to talk to get my point across. If I talk to a group of corporate executives, I need to talk in a different way to get my point across. If I go to a local community center in the hood, I got to talk a different way to get my point across, even if it's the same point. If I go to an elementary school and talk to a bunch of third graders, I have to talk a different way to get the same point across. That's the skill of public speaking, is to be able to be a verbal chameleon to get your point across to the right audience and get them to understand it and then get them to follow it. That is the skill of public speaking. Most people are not good public speakers. So when you hear someone who's a good public speaker, you may not even know what makes them good, but I just explained it to you. It's being able to get your message across. If people don't get your point, it doesn't matter how eloquent you are. So if I was speaking like a marine biologist and I'm speaking in these really deep scientific terms and none of you understood what the hell I was saying, am I doing a good job? The answer is no. The point of communication is for people who you're communicating to understand what you said. If they don't get what you said, then you didn't do a good job. That's how it works. Tony said the masses are unintelligent. Well, everybody thinks that they're smarter than everybody else. If you ask 100 people on the street, are you smarter than the average person? 90% of people would say yes, which is scientifically not possible. Mathematically, not possible. So, and this is what a lot of people said about Trump. So I'm glad you brought up this point, and we'll end it on this point, that when it comes to Trump winning, people say one of the cognitive dissonance, also known as Trump derangement syndrome, is that when Trump wins, people who didn't like Trump say, well, the only reason he won is because he was speaking to the dumb people who are just not smart enough to understand that they shouldn't believe Trump. Well, they tried that in 2016. They tried it again in 2020. And then it's, only us smart people, we didn't vote for Trump, but all the dumb people did vote for Trump. And that's the only reason why he got the majority of votes. Well, here's the problem. The problem with that, and I did a whole live on this, by the way, so y'all who didn't see that, is on YouTube. You can see the replay, is that the masses of people who believe that they're more intelligent than most other people, and these are the intelligent ones who voted Democrat. A couple problems. Number one is that going to school and acquiring a bunch of book knowledge does not make you intelligent. I went to school, I have a college degree, so technically I'm educated, but being educated does not make you smart. Those are two different things, and it depends on what you're educated on. Secondly, is that a lot of people who are in the educated group tend to thumb their noses at people who don't have the same quote unquote education that they have. And they believe that they are in an elevated status compared to these people. And what, Tony, you just said there, you said the masses are unintelligent. And I'm assuming you don't consider yourself to be part of the masses. So I'm assuming that you consider yourself to be part of the elites up here who are not part of the mass. So the masses are down here and they're dumb, and you're up here and you're the smart one. Well, again, we're in a results-based business. Just to remind you of where I come from. I'm an athlete. My background is in sports. Bottom line in the sports world is a scoreboard. Bottom line is not if I think I'm smarter than you or if I think I'm better than you. So I went to the boxing gym this morning. If I think I'm a better boxer than you, but you knocked me out in the second round, who's the better boxer? It's the person who was still standing when the fight was over. So it's not about if I think I'm better or I think I'm smarter. It's about what outcomes are produced. And in politics, the bottom line outcome is, did you win the election? Donald Trump got in 3 elections and he won 2. And depending on who you ask, he won 3. And we can't just say, oh, well, he only won because the masses of people are dumb. Well, let me ask you all a question. And I'll ask this to everybody. If you think the masses of people are dumb and they're unintelligent, and you already knew that because Trump won in 2016, right? So it's not like this is news, right? So, Tony, I'll ask this question to you. If you believe the masses of people are unintelligent, that's your words, and Trump won in 2016, that means you already knew the masses of people were unintelligent. So doesn't that mean if you're trying to get across to them, you might want to, quote unquote, dumb down your language so that you can get them to understand you? Because if you didn't do that, that means you must be a slow learner. You had 8 years to figure it out. Why don't you figure it out? This is a results-based business. This is not a I think I'm smarter than you based business. This is a results-based business. So everybody who said, those of you who don't like Trump and you believe that the masses are unintelligent and that's the only reason that he won in 2016, it's 2024, ladies and gentlemen. You had 8 years to figure it out. Okay, the masses of people are dumb. They're unintelligent. They're uneducated. They're not smart. Okay, now that you know that, okay, how do you beat Donald Trump? I got to talk to those people better than he did. And you had 8 years to figure it out and you still couldn't do it. So how intelligent are you? You had 8 years to get it right. How are you that intelligent that you knew these people are dumb, the masses of people, you still couldn't figure out how to beat him at that game? What does that tell me about your intelligence? You had 8 years to study for a test and you still failed? Somebody let me know. Or what am I missing here? The masses are naive and uninformed. Okay, so again, you found that out in 2016. It's 2024. How you didn't figure out the game? It took you had 8 years to get ready. You couldn't figure it out. That's interesting to me. So that's just the question that I'm asking, because again, this ain't about liking Trump or disliking Trump. This is not about Democrat or Republican. It's about, this is a results-based business. If you know the result is you want this person to win and you want this person to lose, and you already have this belief that these people think this way, you had 8 years to prepare to talk to them in their native language and you still didn't do it successfully. What does that say about you and your intelligence and your level of preparation and your skills? That's what I'm asking. And see, this is the kind of thing that I do as a coach. So when people work with me and I ask them, what do you like most about me? And say, Dre, you're direct, you're to the point, you're no bullshit, you're no fluff. So I'm giving you all a sample. This is the kind of stuff kind of conversations I have with people. And when I talk to businesses, when I talk to sales teams, when I talk to entrepreneurs, because we always got to bring it back to the person in the mirror. So you can talk all the shit you want about them and those people out there, but at the end of everything, you got to come back to the person in the mirror. What are you saying to you? Because it feels good to talk shit about everybody else and how they're too dumb to understand your level of intellect. But how did you not figure it out? Let's talk about you. And a lot of people don't want to have that conversation. So they spend most of their time talking about everybody else, because that allows you to stay in your bubble and keep thinking what you want to think about yourself. So anyway, CJ says, there's a show called Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Yeah, exactly. I remember that show. And what's interesting is talking on a fifth grade level allows you to reach the masses of people, which is the genius of Donald Trump. He talks on a very elementary level, which is why everybody understands him. Kamala Harris is a highly educated person. She was a prosecutor and she was trying to dumb down her language. The problem is she's not a natural at dumbing it down, which is why she lost the election. She's not natural at it. Barack Obama is a highly educated guy. Donald Trump went to college. Donald Trump got a degree. Most of these politicians have degrees, but Donald Trump has a natural ability to dumb down his language to speak to the common person who dropped out of 8th grade. Barack Obama has that ability. He was able to do it successfully. Joe Biden was okay at it. Bill Clinton was excellent at it. Kamala Harris was terrible at it. That's the reason why she lost. Again, so all of you out there who think you're educated and smart and intellectual, you must have the ability to reach people on their level. Because if you can't do that, then you are cutting off your access to getting their attention and to influencing them. You want to influence somebody, you got to speak to them in their language. And if you can't do that, you can't influence them. And that limits your reach. But again, The problem with me even saying that is that this requires you to hold yourself accountable. Most people don't want to hold themselves accountable, so they rather talk about everybody else and how everybody else is dumb, how everybody else is stupid, and everybody else doesn't understand. Everybody else is not intelligent. Well, what does that say about you if you knew they were unintelligent and you still couldn't get through to them? What does that say about you? That's my question, and I'm just going to leave that as a rhetorical question. So Faith Owsley said, a verbal chameleon all day at work. Yes, you got to do it. You have no choice. Faith said, people vote off fear and emotion. Everybody votes off fear and emotion. So again, everybody votes off fear and emotion. This is not, it didn't start with Donald Trump. Everybody votes off of fear and emotion. Every election since 1992 that I can remember, there was fear and emotion used to draw votes. Nobody votes off of logic and rational thinking. Nobody makes decisions, period, based off of logic and rational thinking. What happens is people make a decision based off emotion, and fear is an emotion. And then they come up with a logical justification to make themselves sound smart. This is what every human being does, including me. Everybody does this. We make a emotional based decision, and then we come up with a logical explanation so that we sound like we're really smart and intelligent. And then when we see other people make a decision that's different than ours, we say, oh, they're emotional, they're dumb, they're not logical like me. That's why they made a different decision than what I made. When the fact is, the reality is, we all made an emotional decision. We just made different decisions. And because most people think they're smarter than everybody else, they tend to say everybody else is emotional, but they never call themselves emotional. Everybody is emotional. And most human beings do not have the self-accountability level to look in the mirror and say, all the shit that I say about everybody else also applies to me. Most people don't have the ability to do that. So most people resort to talking shit about everybody else because it feels good and it validates you, but it doesn't help you. It just keeps you in the same spot, thinking the same things and assuming that you are just more moral and just and intelligent than everybody else. When the fact of the matter is, most of us ain't. All right, that's the reality. But most people don't want to hear that. So many people don't like what I'm saying right now. So anyway. All right. With all that being said, folks, I'll do these lives Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. I'm not going to be live tomorrow because I got a in-person priority event that I need to deal with tomorrow morning. But Friday, I will most likely be back. I'm pretty sure I'll be back by Friday. So if everybody wants to hear more of this, if you like this, be back on Friday. I'm not going to be here tomorrow, but Friday, I'll be back 8 a.m. Eastern. If you didn't like this, come back on Friday. All right, I'm going to be talking about a different subject. I don't know what the topic is going to be on Friday. We'll see what happens between now and Friday. If there's another current event, or I may talk about just a general social issue, something that people just tend to talk about on a consistent basis. That'll be 8 a.m. Again, Friday. Belfort Williams is going on, my dude. Come back into the university, man. Come back to the university. I haven't seen you. So what else? I'm on live on 7 different platforms right now. I'm on YouTube, X, Rumble, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I think that's 7. If you're on TikTok, click the link in my bio. You'll see my link to my Instagram and to my YouTube, so you can follow me on those. If you have missed a live, I tell you I talked about something in the past, is on YouTube. The replays, my YouTube lens is over here. So my YouTube camera's over here, Instagram's here, TikTok's here. And if you hated everything I said here today, come back on Friday. All right? If you loved everything I said here today, come back on Friday. And if you want to work with me directly, have me as your direct coach, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That's the link in my bio. If you're ready for some real talk, if you like what I just said the last 5 to 10 minutes, if you're ready for that kind of real talk, not all of y'all are ready for this. All right? Not all y'all ready for this. All right. Some of y'all want to hear what makes you feel good. I'm here to give you what's going to help you do good. And those are 2 different things. Sometimes to get to a higher level, you got to hear some things. You got to do some things that don't feel good in the moment, but they feel good in the long run. And it starts and it ends with the person in the fucking mirror, not them, you. And that's the way that I talk. That's the way I communicate. Not everybody's ready for this. This is not for everybody. I ain't trying to be for everybody, but I'm for the people who I'm for. I got to go to the bathroom. Y'all have a great Thursday. What's the day? Wednesday and Thursday. I'll be back tomorrow. Work on your game. We out of here.